Well, good morning everybody and welcome to the tank. So what's on the bench today? Well, today we're going to be having a look at ETI Vocoder from the 1980s, this lovely old analog processor. My name's Martin Elsey from Tribes of Europe, and yeah, I've been working on this ETI Vocoder. Let's turn some light on so we can see what's happening. Just repairing this for my friend Pete. It's had a number of problems on it. There's a couple of inputs that weren't passing any audio. This bar graph over here wasn't working at all, and there's a lot of misalignment here in the audio filters at the top. So they're all fixed now, and it's up working, and it's great. It's a lovely piece of kit. ETI, that's Electronics Today International. This is a magazine that came out in the early 80s, and they produced these amazing kits that allowed you to cheaply build quality, well-designed pieces of equipment that you wouldn't have, that would have cost like, would have been the same sort of price as a small house in those days, to buy, and it allowed you to build them for yourself, and they're good pieces of kit. The famous cousin of this piece of kit we're looking at now is a thing called the Transcendent, which is a synthesizer. One Bernard Dicken of Manchester bought one of these in the late 70s, built it, and that's the synth you hear playing the lead line on Love Will Tear Us Apart. Bernie Dicken, of course, is Bernie Albrecht or Sumner or whatever you want to call it, whatever he's known as these days. But anyway, today we got the vocoder. So okay, what's a vocoder? Well, put simply, it's a processor that allows you to take the expressive qualities of speech and superimpose them on top of another instrument, a synthesizer or a guitar, whatever. So it allows you to make that kind of instrument talk, I suppose is the best way of putting it. Now it's different to this thing called the voice box. Do you remember Peter Frampton? I want you, show me the way. Wow. That's a different thing entirely. That's a kind of electromechanical device. It just sends the sound up a tube into your mouth and you mouth the words. This device is completely electronic, the vocoder. It's quite different. It produces a similar result, but there's a lot more you can do with it, and as I say, it's completely electronic. So you've all heard the sound of a vocoder. If you know Oh Superman by Laurie Anderson used them a lot. Then you'll know this Kraftwerk used it famously on Autobahn, far on the Autobahn and all that sort of business. You'll know what it sounds like. The minute you hear it, you'll recognise it. So anyway, let's have a little bit of a listen, and you'll be able to see what it does. So, sorry, there's an edit there, just running out of memory, so I had to start again. Okay, so yeah, what am I doing? I'm feeding in the Poly 61 Korg synthesizer over here, which is also from the early 80s. This came from Duran's studio. So let's see if they've left any chords in this device. So we're feeding that in here in the excitation channel. Let's have a listen. So we've got that coming in. Now we're going to vocode that instrument, okay? So just remember that sound. Over here I'm feeding in some speech from YouTube, in fact. So this is a speech here we got from Donald Trump, or is it Biff from Back to the Future 2? Not sure, you be the judge. But anyway, so we got some entertaining stuff coming there from Big Don. I'm putting this out, and I'm just going through a compressor here just to sort of round things up a little bit, keep the lows, push the loads up a little bit and stop the highs from getting too high. and then we're coming down this tube here into the speech input. So this is what the speech sounds like.
Of the United States.
Okay, just wait for that crowd to die down and we'll have a listen to the vocoded output. Let's wait for him to get into one of his rants, and we'll hear what it all sounds like. Come on boy, don't milk it, let's have it. Why is he that colour? It's got to be the urine, isn't it? He's tanned like leather. Right, let's just go for it. So turn the speech down and let's have a listen to the vocoder. So we're hearing the crowd at the moment.
When we started this journey on June 16th last year, we, and I say we, because we are a tissue, whatever I say, almost politician drugs, the most in the history of the Republican Party.
Just give us a couple of tweaks.
Republican Party would get 60% more votes than it received 8 years ago. Who would have believed this? Who would have believed this? The Democrats, on the other hand.
So yeah, you get the idea, vocoded audio. Now, the good thing about this thing is it's actually, you don't just have to use an external instrument like that Poly 61 synth. It's got its own internal oscillators as well, and you can get some real good effects from this. You'll recognise some of this sound, I'm sure. So let's turn it up and see what we got. No, it's very Kraftwerk, that, isn't it? Very Kraftwerk. This is very Numbers, know the track from Computer World? Come on, Don, hit us. Hit us, baby.
Convention occurs at all the places for our nation. The attacks on our police and the terrorism of our cities threaten our very way of life. Any politician who does not grasp this danger is not fit to lead our country.
If you want to stop people dying, mate, how about a bit of gun control? Might make a bit of sense, mightn't it? Start with your own homegrown guys for a start.
Watching this address tonight, I've seen the recent images of violence in our streets and the chaos in our communities. Many have witnessed this violence. Some have even been its victims.
You get the idea anyway.
For all of you, the crime and violence that today afflicts our nation will soon, and I mean very soon, come to an end. On January 20th of 2017, safety will be restored.
So anyway, you get the idea. Great piece of kit. So just briefly, what's going on here? If you want to know, basically, the audio from the speech and the instrument comes in, and the frequency band gets split into 15 individual slices. And what all this gubbins is doing is it looks at each individual slice and works out what the level is in that slice at any particular point in time. It does that on the speech, and then what it does is it says, okay, let's make each correspondence slice in the instrument. So in this case, I'm using the internals, but it could be the Poly 61. Make each of the slices on that instrument the same level as was on the speech, and so it creates this kind of frequency envelope. And all these filters you see in here, all these devices in here, these are the 15 filters that are doing the work. Okay, so that's basically how it works. I mean, if you're interested, which you might not be, but it is interesting, this is a very old idea, and it comes from World War II. Basically, they wanted a way of encrypting telephone conversations between Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt. And so a fella called Homer Dudley at the Bell Laboratories came up with this principle of cutting the analog signal into strips. And then what they did is they didn't mix it in with another instrument, they mixed it in with a code so that they'd shuffle all the frequency bands around, kind of like, almost like an Enigma machine, but for analog signals, audio signals in this case. And you had to know what code was being used to then put it back in the right order. So it's very much like the Enigma system. It worked really well, but it wasn't without its problems. Basically, the codes had to be burnt onto, or pressed onto, gramophone records. And Roosevelt had to have one at his end, Churchill had to have one at his end, and then they had to use just a conventional phone line just to talk. People, the engineers, had to set these two gramophone records up so they ran in absolute synchronization, because the codes had to be synchronized for everything to get put back in the right order. Anyway, then eventually, of course, it moved into kind of musical use as well, but it still remains in your mobile phones. The phone I'm filming this on, the phone that you've got in your bag or whatever, still use this idea of vocoding. When your voice conversation is sent through the air, they don't actually send your voice as such, they send the envelope of your voice through the air, and then there is a synthesizer within your phone that reproduces that, just the way a vocoder works. And the chip and the circuit that does it is called a vocoder. So it's still there, it's still being used, except obviously everything's digital. This thing we're looking at right now is all analog. So anyway, rambled on a bit there, but anyway, I hope you get the idea of this, and it's a great piece of kit, and I wish I could keep it, but I've got to give it back. So anyway, that's it from me. Hope it's useful, and we'll speak to you soon, next time when we see what's on the bench.